Hello and welcome to the Life Science Success Podcast. My name is Don and I'm a consultant in life sciences and I'll be your host today. I'm the president and principal of 5280 Life Sciences Consulting, and our focus is on helping clients try to scale with services that'll help them succeed. One example would be that if you're trying to implement metrics at your organization would be to download our free OKR guide and take my OKR course. Today, my guest is Brett Landrum. Brett is passionate about solving some of healthcare's challenges and problems around transparency and access to technology. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. So, can we just start maybe with you telling the guests just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Brett Landrum. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. Most people just think Mardi Gras and immediately whenever someone says that. There's a lot more going on here, especially in the biotech space. I really was part of or my family is has four boys. I'm the second oldest. Was highly competitive growing up, kind of just fighting for attention from the parents. And whenever whenever my parents really kind of just moved us around a lot growing up. Um, Whenever we finally landed in South Louisiana, um, my whenever we whenever we finally landed in South Louisiana, that's really when I started to kind of realize that I needed to kind of figure things out myself. My parents weren't gonna give me a free ride. They weren't gonna they really wanted me to sort of forge my own path. So I started my first company when I was in sixth grade. I wanted to go to a dance, and my father's like, "Well, how are you going to pay for the tie?" So I was like, "I don't know." So I ended up, asking the principal of the school if I could DJ. Asked him how much the DJs made. He said $300 a night. It's like, wow, that's incredible. So
That's a
I
lot of
so
money
to
for
make
a kid.
I know I was like, I'm rich, but I didn't have money to buy equipment. So my dad's like, well, actually, hey, I'll loan you the money, but you got to pay me back. So I learned at the age of in sixth grade, kind of what it took to be able to get a loan from someone, pay them back, the economics of the business to kind of make things work. Um, so kind of fast forwarding through that, I went. Give me one.
Yeah, so I mean, Brett, it's obviously really interesting whenever your journey starts so early as well.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's had some kids in the background. So
It's a part of natural life anymore. I think whenever you have to work from home or anything else, I mean, hey, it's gonna happen.
yeah, yeah. So after starting my entrepreneurship kind of journey very early, I attended LSU, studied biology. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I really wanted to take over my aunt's neurology practice. She kind of advised me to do otherwise. She said, really, healthcare is changing so much. You're not really going to want to be a provider 20 years from now. And looking back at that, basically 20 years ago, I think she was kind of right. And a lot of things she was saying, a lot of the trends that she was finding. Um, so I went kind of the business route. I started, getting experience in high school. My senior year, I worked full time selling cell phones. But I was exposed to running credit scores and kind of understanding the way the world worked, dealing with the public, what that was like. And I really grinded for about 10 years before kind of opening my eyes to, creating, medical software companies. Um, I think that the grind, working every day, going to school full time, I realized that autonomy was really what was most important to me. So I think that that's yeah, trying to give an introduction to myself, but I don't think that that's the question right now.
No, I think it's what these are all of the steps that you took, overall, and then so now you're the founder of GatherMed. What is
Mhm.
GatherMed, and what is the focus of GatherMed?
Yeah, so I mean, GatherMed is kind of how doctors find out if what they're doing is working or not. I mean, if you look at kind of the process now, a lot of physicians rely on subjective answers from patients. They rely on the patient to show up to a visit or a telemedicine visit, um, you know, it, or maybe go to a lab. Hopefully, they get their lab results. You know, GatherMed is surfacing real time physiologic data, so we're kind of providing insights to you know how the medication's working, whatever treatment options the patient's on. We're able to surface, you know, their real-time physiologic data, so doctors are able to make adjustments to medications, or they're able to sort of create flags on patients and say, hey, like this patient's trending down, like we should probably get them in for this lab or whatever it is. And then also kind of a little bit more specifically, I mean, is also device agnostic. So we bring in information from many consumer wearables, cellular medical devices, really kind of you name it. There's hundreds of devices that we integrate with now, and we surface all that information into one clear view on a patient's dashboard. So I've heard people say, "Oh, it'd be great if we had a dashboard for patients where, just like your car, you can see how fast you're going, you can see if your tank's running low." Well, we do that, but we do that for the doctor's perspective on each patient that they have, both from a population health perspective and also for an individual patient. And
So is
yeah,
this normally deployed, across hospital system, or how does a doctor wind up with the access to GatherMed? Is it by practice or by hospital system? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got so many different sort of categories of clients. We've got, federally qualified health centers. We have hospital systems that are trying to build a digital gateway. We've got, insurance companies, Medicare Advantage plans, providers that are doing direct contracting, companies that grew through acquisition because our service is fully reimbursable and it's kind of a newer thing. So, they use it as a strategy for acquisition and kind of how they incentivize providers. But yeah, we work with a lot of different types of groups. I mean, we're even doing clinical trials because real time data in clinical trials is really, really useful. I mean, essentially, decentralized clinical trials is a whole another section, but I was really more focused on, sort of the commercial side of healthcare.
Very good. And then you also are the co-founder of Sleep Vigil. What can you tell us about that? It was interesting whenever you see an entrepreneur with two companies. I mean, I feel like I've got, I'm juggling a lot of different, organizations as well, but at the same time, I'm not at the helm more or less of two companies at the same time.
Well, Sleep Vigil is powered by GatherMed, so it makes it a little bit more, maintainable, or simpler to actually, manage both. Sleep Vigil is really essentially a care plan that's executed by GatherMed. So GatherMed gathers real time SpO2 data. We do this continuously through the night. If the patients have devices like Garmin or Withings, there's other devices that we look at as well, but we're able to look at their sleep cycles. We're able to look at their continuous SpO2 levels. And the reason we're doing this is because we found that a lot of people that are on CPAP, even though their AHIs are normal, um, their oxygen levels are lower than 90%. I mean, we have patients that are in the 70s, and this is really alarming because their doctors thought that, hey, they're on CPAP, they're getting better, they're maintained. But the reality is the CPAP's ability to gather real time data wasn't really telling the whole story. It's really telling the story that it needs to tell to keep the patient on the treatment, but it's not necessarily that the patient was getting better. So we decided to, I was able to partner up with this Dr. Keith Matheny, who owns a large GPO of ENTs and sleep practices, or for ENTs and sleep practices, and we offered this service. Kind of going back to what I was saying about GatherBed, finding out if the patient's therapy is working or not. And that's really what Sleep Vigil does. And Yeah, there's more to come than that. There's a lot more care plans coming than Sleep Vigil.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. What do you find most challenging about being an entrepreneur in life sciences?
Um, well, I mean, aside from focus, I think, what's most challenging is, you got to look at, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs that get into medicine, they have to know that a good idea in medicine is a misdemeanor and a great idea is a felony. So be prepared to, have a lot of lawyers figure out exactly what needs to be done from an entity relationship perspective, from a contractual perspective. I think, making whatever your product is legal is a challenge in itself in healthcare. Um, Making sure that you have the ability to hit a moving target, because the target's constantly moving in healthcare. One day, what is considered to be medically necessary will change the next. So being able to pivot. Um, Also, reimbursement. I mean, knowing who's paying for the services you provide, knowing what your clients are motivated by, that's also complex. Um, and yeah, I think being able to kind of coordinate all these things, um, you know, from how it's billed, what it's worth, is it medically necessary, is it reimbursable, how can I market it? Is the FDA going to require me to have a certification to be able to market this? Can I go direct to consumer? Can I market to doctors? I mean, all those things are extremely challenging just to get started. And then I think once you have whatever it is that you're marketing and putting together, and you feel you got good legal opinions on it, and you understand, kind of how it's reimbursed and those things. Um, I think I think then the real challenge is getting it into practices. Like figuring out like what that sales cycle is for um, getting any product or service into a medical practice, whether it's a hospital or independent provider. It's challenging. It takes a lot of time. So it's definitely not a space for people that are not patient or not persistent.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I've always said that, in my view, healthcare is one of the slowest areas to adopt things. I mean,
Hmm.
just even in terms of like artificial intelligence. I mean, we're talking, much more now about, having artificial intelligence, across lots of different areas. There's some great things that are happening inside of life sciences, but at the same time, I mean, AI was available, I don't know, a decade ago or something, maybe not at the same levels as it is now, but it's still, is one of those things where I watch our just slow adoption curve, continue to grow.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in healthcare, it's one of the areas where if you build it, it doesn't mean they'll come. Um,
Yep.
the standards that we're living off of were developed in 1984,
Mm,
and they're still vastly used today and sort of the standard. And I think that's for a good reason sometimes, and other times it hurts us. But
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, we want people to be careful. We definitely don't want patients to be hurt, but at the same time, it's almost like, after you crossed a couple of those hurdles along the way,
mhm.
and you've proven that, hey, look, this actually, would be beneficial for your practice. It just would be nice to see things get adopted and move a little quicker. I mean, I guess if
Yeah.
you sort of replay the dialogue that you had between, what your aunt had said about her practice versus, where you are, do you feel like the initial knowledge that you gained though in school in biology and things like that's helped you along the way?
I think from time to time, after I found success early, I was able to, I had a lot of sort of companies pitching different ideas. Some of them were in the, more biotech space. So I did kind of tap into some of that, knowledge of like human ecology to kind of vet opportunities. But that's really maybe only two or three times, yeah, I don't really think that it was all that valuable at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts on school is, isn't the most positive. So,
Well, it matches. I mean, look, I've spent a lot of time in school and spent a lot of money on my education, and at the same time, I still feel like at the end of the day, my life experience and my business experience are really where the value comes from. Sure, I learned some foundational things that, maybe helps me sort of, put boundaries up that, I know will be successful in business. But at the
mhm.
same time, it's not to say that you couldn't learn that in real life, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you could fall down once or twice and figure out pretty quickly, hey, look, I probably
yeah.
do
I
need a
mean,
business plan and a bit of
I
a
mean,
vision for the future.
yeah. I think, I mean, taking the biology into consideration, like, the greatest catalyst to change is discomfort. And I mean, school really only makes you just uncomfortable when it's close to test time or things like that. But
Mm.
like in the real world, like it's kind of like, feast or famine. Like you've got to figure things out. You have to learn quick, like, and, and there's a lot of, trial and error, being an entrepreneur. And I think that those errors really is where you learn the most and grow the most as an entrepreneur. School doesn't give you that. You might fail a test, you're just out, right? And then it's like, well, okay, well, what about the rest of my life? Like I think that the best lessons are learned in the real world for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that there's, my general belief is that there's a wave that's coming that will help to revolutionize our thoughts in terms of education and things like that. And I mean, I wouldn't say that your thoughts about education are unpopular either. I mean, I think that you're a lot more with the mainstream as well in terms of
Mhm.
formal education and where you spend your money and time.
Yeah.
So, in terms of being a life science, entrepreneur or being an entrepreneur in healthcare, why do you do it? I mean, beside the paycheck, obviously that you have to make a
Mhm.
living some way, but beside that, what are your thoughts in terms of why this space and why do you want to work here?
Um, I mean, I think it's incredibly challenging, but also very rewarding. I mean, if you could find solutions in this space, I mean, it's a great accomplishment. I think I really kind of do it more. Why I do it now isn't really why I got started. I got started more just for autonomy. Going through the grind, full time student, full time work. For many years. Having 10 years experience right out of college is kind of unheard of. Most people have 0 years experience. So I was almost burnt out, like, at a young age. So I knew that I wanted to own a company. I knew I wanted autonomy. I knew I wanted to be in the medical space. There's always new challenges to solve. So if you're a problem solver, it's a great place to be in because you have an endless amount of problems you can solve. I mean, you can wrap your head and spend an entire lifetime, around developing solutions in this space. So I think that's kind of why I do it in this space. But um, you know, um, seeing, and I think also like having that positive feedback loop. I mean, early on, my first company I created was MetaClinic. Being able to raise millions of dollars for that company, build a really cool team that was like minded. That was incredibly awesome to be a part of, and after getting that experience, knowing what that's like, and knowing kind of that we're making an impact on people. Like within that company, we've tested a few million patients now for different cancer tests, like different cancers, and that's incredibly rewarding to know. Like, hey, like I built a piece of software that provided access to highly esoteric, anatomical pathology, that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And there's definitely an element of just the impact of what you're doing, that's sort of motivational and kind of part of the reason why. But I would say originally it was just for autonomy, and I didn't really care if I made money. I just wanted to be able to work from anywhere. I didn't want to have to go to an office, commute to an office, sit in one space.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to save. I think on both fronts. One, having an impact on patients in the world, as well as just having freedom to be creative and
Hmm.
somewhat own your own destiny. I
Yeah.
certainly am loving this space as well, and certainly echo a lot of the same things that you said. So there are three
Mhm.
questions that I like to ask every guest. Brett, what inspires you?
Um, hmm. Hmm. My wife inspires me. She's an artist, so the creative side. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, kind of echoing what I was saying before. I think just seeing the impact I'm already making. That's been inspiring. Actually, within GatherMed, when I first started it out, I was the one that would actually call the patients. I didn't have a call center then. I didn't have like a team. So, as patients were getting enrolled and they were missing their readings, I wod call them and say, "Hey, everything's okay, so and so." And this one of our first patients, like really like first five patients we had. This guy was in a hypertensive crisis. He had no idea. So our system alerts him, says, "Hey, you need to go to the hospital, or you need to seek a medical attention." And he did. The next day, he calls me and says, "Hey, like, your system saved my life. Like, I could have been any second that I had a stroke." This
Wow.
guy was very high, and and I was calling people from my the system called like dial pad. So you're calling from your phone. So whenever people call you back, it's ringing on your cell phone. So you're not missing anything. And yeah, to get that call from him, early on, really kind of inspired me to keep on doing it. It's just seeing that impact, that real time impact like that was really rewarding and really inspiring. And before, making any money within GatherMed, I think that's, that kind of idea is what really kind of pushed me the extra year that you need to kind of see revenue pick up. But, um, but yeah, I mean, just thinking about how many people out there right now that are relying on their ability to see like detect their own physiology. You can't like,
Right. Yeah.
they need
Yeah.
system, they need technology to play a more meaningful role. And so it's inspiring to know that I have the ability and have already done it and want to continue to kind of grow that.
Yeah. This coming from a guy that wears two health trackers, I somewhat echo a lot of the things that you say that we're not very good at knowing our own what's happening with our own bodies all the time. And I have one health tracker that does a really great job, and then the other one fills in the gaps where the first one doesn't settle things. So Brett, what
Yeah.
what concerns you?
Um, well, I mean, I think that I mean, there's a lot of patients that are coming of age that have chronic conditions. Um, we've only scratched the surface. Like we're heading in an area where there's going to be more people that are over the age of 50 than there are, under the age of 20. That's kind of a unique time. I think that we don't have enough providers. But I think, kind of more specifically, my concern within, biotechnology and kind of remote patient monitoring space is that, we're kind of making the same mistake that we did before. Um, you know, Medicare insurance companies, they're still paying for time. We don't have time. We don't have time anymore for doctors to spend on patients. Doctors are reimbursed for, the time that they spend reviewing the data that I provide them. But the reality is like we have the capability to recognize things that are going to trigger the next event for the patient. Hey, go get a lab test. Hey, do this sleep study, whatever it is. But we still rely on someone, a medical provider, to spend time in doing that. But we just don't have that, and we have more patients than we've ever had before that have issues. So what concerns me is that we're not putting the right incentives in place to really solve the problem that we need to solve to be able to scale prevention. Right now, there is no scaling prevention because it's so dependent on time, and we don't have it.
Yeah,
So hopefully that'll change.
absolutely. And then lastly, what excites you?
Um, I mean, really, I'm excited that technology is actually playing a more meaningful role in healthcare now. I think, just 10 years ago, I mean, EHRs were really the main thing. I mean, maybe you had pacemakers, but I think seeing a greater adoption of technology in healthcare is really exciting. I'm also excited about kind of new areas overall, like self signaling and things like that. I think we're on the verge of uncovering an entire new division of healthcare, and I'm really looking forward to us as the as humanity understanding self signaling and utilizing it. Like instead of giving someone medication, being able to put a device on them that sends signals to their body that has the same impact as a medication. So I think self signaling is a really exciting field that I know I'll be tapping into soon.
Very good. So, Brett, if somebody wanted to learn more about GatherMed or they wanted to learn about Sleep Vigil, where could they learn more?
Um, really, the website, gathermed.com, sleepvigil.com. And if you wanted a kind of a greater perspective on it, deploy.care is also a site. I think that's a good one to visit.
Very good. And, just for anybody that's listening, we'll also include all the links in the and show notes in the page for the podcast as well. Brett Landrum, I wanted to thank you so much for being a guest on the Life Science Success Podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.